Job is one of the most difficult books in the Old Testament. Theologically, it's a very complicated book. Read it. What do you do with a story in which God and Satan enter into a divine wager, using Job as a pawn on a chessboard? What do you do with a book in which children are killed only to be replaced in the last chapter, just as if children are replaceable? This book is a very difficult book. In chapter 2, we are introduced to Mrs. Job. We are not told anything about her, but we are allowed to consider everything that has happened. We are left to imagine the grief brought about by the tragedy that befell her children and the other victims in the story. Let's remember now that these were very difficult times for Mrs. Job. She lost much. When Job lost his wealth, hers was gone too. When Job's children were killed, she was left childless also. Now, none of us, I hope none of us will ever experience such loss. Chapter 2, verse 9 is a very painful verse. It's painful to see this unfortunate attitude. Mrs. Job, in her grief and sorrow, at the height of Job's anguish, she spoke up. Do you still hold fast your integrity? She pushed Job to do precisely what God said he would not do. She uses the same phrase that God used in commending Job. Have you noticed my servant Job? He is the finest man in all the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and stays away from evil. The word translated integrity also carries this idea of completeness and fullness. As I read this story, I get the sense that Mrs. Job analyzed the family circumstance. She concluded that God was irrelevant in the situation. She thought that God did not care about their plight and that God was not able to do anything about their situation. Therefore, she makes this recommendation. Now, I'm not judging her, but it's painful to hear her say, curse God and die. Hebrew scholars have come across this very interesting phenomenon. Mrs. Job's words, translated curse, is also used in Job chapter 1, verse 5, and Job chapter 1, verse 11. It comes from the same root word that means bless. Now, Given the context, scholars agree that the text makes sense only if the idea of a curse is used. In this case, Mrs. Job was saying, curse God, bid goodbye to Jehovah, and let the chips fall. And now, for fear of sounding insensitive to the situation, I want to say I think Mrs. Job was arrogant. Look at Job's response. You speak as one of the foolish women speak. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of God? And shall we not receive evil? I was disturbed, troubled, in fact, by Job's theology here. Troubled by the use of this term evil. So I checked it. I found out that the Hebrew word does not suggest wickedness on the part of God. The word can refer to anything bad that happens. So I read chapter 1 again and saw all these bad things that happened. Job's life was dashed to pieces. The image of Job sitting in the ashes of his former life, scratching, was painful. I am not saying I've been there, but there are times I find myself scratching at the painful itches in my own life. So I want to suggest, my friends, that Job represents us. We should strive to be blameless, with integrity, fearing God, and staying away from all evil. Let me also point out that being blameless and upright does not mean a person is sinless. It only means that despite all the trials, we will remain faithful to the Lord. Amidst all the temptations, we will not fall into sin. Friends, let's continue to refute Satan's charges against God. We have a God who will be with us in our time of plenty and in our time of ashes. We have a God who will hear our cries for mercy, and he will listen to our cries of indignation. I just hope that God will be able to brag on us as he was able to brag